In a quiet corner of the universe, far from the bustling stars of the Galactic War, there lived a civilization that had once been proud and full of life. Their cities shimmered with strange lights, and their technology was admired across many star systems. They had discovered ways to travel across the stars, communicate across vast distances, and build societies that valued knowledge, art, and community. For centuries, they had dreamed of joining the Great Council of Galaxies, a body that guided the relationships between countless species. They had imagined being part of something bigger, where they could share their discoveries, learn from others, and find their place in the vast universe. But one day, everything changed. The Council had judged them for reasons that were never fully explained, labeling them as unworthy and dangerous. Some claimed it was because of a misunderstanding. Others whispered it was because of envy. But no matter the reason, the Council's decision was final. They were cast out. Their once celebrated society became shunned, their messages ignored, and their attempts to plead their case rejected. The universe that had once seemed so full of possibility now appeared cold and unwelcoming. Life after the shunning was hard. Food supplies became scarce, and energy shortages slowed down their cities. Factories that had once hummed with constant activity fell silent, and the bright towers of knowledge that once lit the night dimmed. People moved with caution, their voices quieter and their eyes filled with worry. Children who once ran freely through open squares now played in small enclosed areas, watched closely by parents afraid of what might happen next. Families huddled together at night, sharing stories of better times, trying to hold on to hope, even as fear crept into their hearts. Despite everything, they did not give up. They continued to work, to invent, and to learn. Scientists tried to find new ways to generate energy. Farmers experimented with growing food in harsh conditions, and teachers continued to educate the young, telling them that one day, things could be better. Their society became smaller, quieter, but it did not die. The people adapted to their new reality, finding strength in their community and in the small joys that remained. Songs sung quietly in homes, art created in secret, and the comforting presence of friends and family. Every day was a struggle. People would gather around screens, trying to send messages into space, hoping for a response. Sometimes a flicker of light would appear, a faint signal from another civilization, but it was never enough. They waited for help that never came. Their isolation was not just physical but emotional. The silence from the galaxy was heavy, and it weighed on them. It was as if the stars themselves had turned away, leaving them to face their challenges alone. Yet in this difficult time, something remarkable happened. Even as they faced scarcity and rejection, they began to look inward to discover strengths they had not realized they possessed. Communities became closer. Strangers helped each other without expecting anything in return. They shared their food, their knowledge, and their small comforts. Children learned resilience from their parents, and parents found courage by caring for the young. It was a slow, difficult life, but it was filled with moments of quiet heroism. Every day they proved that even when the galaxy turned its back, life could go on and hope could still exist. In the darkness of their exile, the alien race began to dream again. They imagined a day when they would no longer be alone, when someone would listen to their story, and when their suffering could be eased. They talked in whispers about the possibility of contact, of finding friends among the stars, even if the Great Council had abandoned them. And in those whispers, the first seeds of hope were planted, a hope that would one day grow into something powerful enough to change their fate. This was a civilization that had faced judgment, rejection, and near despair, yet it had not lost its humanity, or rather its alien equivalent, a sense of compassion, creativity, and resilience. They had learned to survive without the galaxy's approval, to cherish each day, and to support one another in ways that no council or government could ever enforce. It was a hard lesson, but one that shaped them into a society that would never give up no matter how dire the circumstances. Even in exile, their culture survived. Their art became more personal, more meaningful, as they expressed both sorrow and hope through paintings, music, and storytelling. Their knowledge continued to grow, even if it was shared only among themselves. And in every act of kindness, every new discovery, and every shared meal, they reminded themselves that they were still a civilization worth saving. The universe outside remained silent, indifferent, and sometimes harsh. But the people who lived on that distant world refused to be defeated. They waited, they hoped, and they prepared. Somewhere among the stars, they knew there might still be someone who would answer their call, someone who could see their struggle and help them rise again. And in that quiet determination, they held on to the most precious gift they still had: hope. Even though the alien race had learned to survive in isolation, the weight of being forgotten by the galaxy pressed on them every day. Their cities, though still standing, were quieter now, and the hum of energy that once filled the streets had dimmed. They had food and shelter, but the emptiness of knowing no one cared about them lingered like a shadow over their lives. One day, a small group of scientists and engineers gathered in the central tower of the largest city. Their eyes were tired and their hands were covered in smudges of metal and circuitry, yet their minds were focused on a single hope, sending a message into space. It was not just a signal of distress. It was a plea, a voice that carried their story, their pain, and their need for help. They worked tirelessly for days. Some checked the signal frequency, while others carefully coded a message that would be understandable across the galaxy. They included images of their cities, their families, and their culture. They described their hardships, their hope, and their willingness to cooperate with anyone willing to listen. Every word was chosen carefully, every image intended to show not weakness but determination. Once the signal was ready, they gathered together and sent it into the void. The beam of light stretched across the stars, traveling farther than anyone could watch, farther than anyone on their world could imagine. For the first time in many years, the people felt a spark of possibility. Perhaps someone somewhere would see their message and answer. Perhaps someone would care. But the days turned into weeks and the weeks into months. The silence was deafening. Messages bounced back from distant systems marked ignored or unreachable. Other civilizations, once allies or neighbors, either avoided them or refused to respond. Rumors spread among the alien population. Some said the council had deliberately blocked their signals. Others whispered that the galaxy had forgotten they even existed. The people began to feel the crushing weight of loneliness, wondering if their efforts were useless. Yet, even in this silence, life went on. Families continued to support each other. Children still played under the fading glow of the city lights, inventing games from scraps and old toys. Elders shared their wisdom, teaching the young about their history and culture. Artists painted, sculpted, and sang songs that reminded everyone of better times. Each act of creativity, each shared meal, and each story told in whispers became a small act of defiance against despair. Some in the society began to gather in secret, forming small groups to brainstorm new ways to reach out. They experimented with different technologies, sending out signals in codes that only the cleverest minds might understand. They tried patterns of light and pulses of energy, hoping these subtle messages would somehow be noticed. Every attempt was a gamble, but even the smallest hope kept them moving forward. The alien race had learned something important in their exile. Hope could not be measured by immediate success. It was not about whether someone answered today or tomorrow, but about believing that their voice mattered enough to travel across the stars. They discovered patience and perseverance in ways they had never known before. They learned to celebrate small victories, like a signal that traveled farther than expected, or a message that was partially received by a distant system. Still, fear and doubt remained. Some questioned if anyone would ever care. Others worried that the Council's judgment was final, that no one in the galaxy would ever welcome them again. Arguments occasionally erupted in public squares, but these moments of tension were quickly tempered by the stronger instinct to survive and to support one another. The alien race had been through so much that they understood the value of unity more than ever. Amidst all this, children became a symbol of hope. They did not understand fully why the galaxy had rejected them, but they felt the sadness in their parents' eyes. They laughed, played, and dreamed of a world where they were not shunned. Their innocence reminded the adults why it was worth continuing to send messages into the void, why it was worth believing in something bigger than themselves. Even when signals were ignored, the children's joy carried a quiet resilience that inspired everyone around them. Months turned into years. The alien race continued their work, refining their signals, learning more about the technology they had, and sharing their lives with each other. They grew stronger in ways that were invisible to the outside world. Their culture became richer, more layered with stories of survival, compassion, and ingenuity. And though no answer had come yet, they refused to give up entirely. Their hope became a quiet pulse that moved through every part of their society, invisible but unstoppable. And then one day, far beyond their world, something unusual happened. A faint signal flickered back, barely noticeable, but it carried a warmth that had not been felt in their lives for a long time. It was not from the council, and it was not from any familiar neighbor. But it was a sign, a single response, a ripple in the vast silence of space. For the first time in years, their hearts lifted. They realized that even in the darkest times, even when the galaxy seemed to have forgotten them, there was a possibility that someone out there might listen, that someone might care, that someone might come to help. This realization changed them. Their society, once quiet and cautious, became more daring in its attempts to communicate. They worked together, encouraged each other, and held onto the smallest signs of progress. They understood now that hope was not just a dream, it was an action. Every message they sent, every attempt to connect was a step forward. Every failure was a lesson. Every small success a reason to keep moving. The alien race, shunned by the galaxy, had discovered something profound. That survival was not just about technology or resources, but about the courage to keep trying, the strength to support each other, and the belief that kindness and understanding could exist somewhere, even in a universe that had turned its back on them. And though no one had yet come to help them, they were ready, quietly, patiently, and bravely, to continue their search for a friend beyond the stars. Far across the stars, on a small blue planet called Earth, people were living their ordinary lives, unaware of the struggles unfolding in a distant corner of the universe. Scientists in observatories and research stations were scanning space, searching for signals from distant civilizations. It was part curiosity, part a dream to understand the unknown. One day, a faint and unusual signal appeared on their screens. At first, it was just a pattern of energy pulses, difficult to interpret and easy to dismiss as noise. But as the scientists studied it carefully, they realized it was unlike anything they had encountered before. The signal was intelligent. It carried a rhythm, a structure, a message encoded in a way that suggested thought and intention. The scientists leaned closer, analyzing it hour after hour, trying to decode its meaning. There were images embedded in the pulses, shapes of cities, people, and strange technologies. There were patterns that hinted at language, and even symbols that suggested the beings behind the signal were reaching out for help. As the discovery spread, debates began to stir among leaders, scientists, and policymakers. Some argued that it was too risky to respond, that it could be a trap or a danger to Earth. Others believed it was a unique chance to connect with a civilization in need. Meetings were held, papers were written, and arguments continued late into the night. The human race had always dreamed of exploring the stars, but now a real choice had arrived. Would they reach out to help, or would they remain observers, watching from a distance? Amid the debates, a small group of explorers and engineers were selected to prepare for a journey beyond the solar system. They were not chosen for fame or recognition, but for their curiosity, compassion, and courage. They spent months studying the alien signal, building ships capable of the long journey, and preparing equipment to communicate, provide aid, and observe. Every tool, every device was designed with one purpose: to reach out and connect with the beings who had cried for help across the stars. Back on the alien world, the signals continued to be sent. The beings there had little reason to hope, but the faint warmth of a response had changed something. They noticed patterns in the void, tiny flickers that suggested someone might be listening. Their excitement was cautious. Years of rejection had taught them to temper hope. But they could not help feeling anticipation. They began to prepare themselves for contact, cleaning their cities, sending their young ones to safe areas, and teaching them the importance of patience and understanding. When the humans finally arrived in the alien system, their ships glided silently through the darkness. The aliens watched from a distance at first, unsure what to expect. They had been betrayed before, shunned and ignored by civilizations far stronger than themselves. Their hearts raced, their minds struggled between hope and fear. Could these new beings be trusted? Or would this be another disappointment, another instance of betrayal? The first moments of contact were tense. Humans sent carefully measured signals, simple greetings, and images of their own world. Hoping to show friendliness and understanding, the aliens responded cautiously, observing, analyzing, and trying to understand the strange creatures before them. There were miscommunications, gestures that meant one thing to humans but another to the aliens. But patience and empathy bridged the gap. Slowly, a dialogue formed. The two civilizations began to understand each other, finding shared values in curiosity, compassion, and the desire to survive and thrive. Humans brought gifts not of wealth or weapons, but of knowledge and tools that could help the alien race rebuild. They demonstrated ways to generate energy more efficiently, purify water, and grow food in difficult conditions. They taught ways to repair damaged technology, and offered guidance on solving problems that had seemed insurmountable to the aliens. Every act was carefully considered, showing respect for the aliens' culture and autonomy. The humans did not impose themselves. They offered help, and that distinction mattered deeply. The alien society began to change in subtle but important ways. Cities once quiet and dimly lit now began to hum with life again. Children played in open squares, laughing freely, while adults worked side by side with humans, learning new skills and sharing their own knowledge. Hope spread like a gentle wind, lifting the spirits of a population that had lived in silence and fear for so long. For the first time in generations, they felt seen, valued, and understood. Yet the humans were careful not to act as saviors in a condescending way. They recognized the strength that had allowed the aliens to survive alone for so long. They treated the aliens as equals, partners in rebuilding rather than subjects to be rescued. This respect mattered more than technology or resources. It was the bridge that allowed trust to grow, that allowed a partnership to form, and that planted the seeds of a future where both civilizations could learn from one another. In time, the first exchanges became more complex. Ideas were shared freely, scientific concepts, stories of culture, art, music, and philosophy. The aliens introduced humans to traditions that had survived centuries of hardship, while humans shared experiences from their own history of overcoming challenges. Every day the connection deepened, revealing the potential for a new kind of community, one that crossed the boundaries of planets, species, and experiences. And though the broader galaxy remained indifferent, the aliens no longer felt alone. Their world, once cast aside, now had visitors who not only listened but acted to help. They realized that even when the universe seemed uncaring, kindness could be found in unexpected places. They began to dream not just of survival but of thriving, of building a future that had once seemed impossible. Through these interactions, both humans and aliens learned a simple but profound truth. Compassion could travel across light years, empathy could bridge even the widest divides, and hope could flourish even in the darkest corners of the universe. The aliens, shunned for so long, found allies not because of politics or power, but because someone chose to see them as worthy, capable, and deserving of help. The first contact had begun not with grand gestures, but with careful attention, patience, and respect. And in that careful beginning, both civilizations understood that this was not just a meeting. It was the start of a new chapter, one where fear could be replaced by trust, isolation by connection, and despair by hope. For the alien race, it was the first real sign that the universe might not have abandoned them entirely. For humanity, it was the first proof that courage, curiosity, and compassion could reach across the stars and make a difference in lives far beyond their own. The humans' arrival on the alien world marked a moment that had been imagined for generations. Yet now that it had come, it was more overwhelming than anyone had expected. From the human ships, they could see the alien cities stretching across the valleys and plains, glowing faintly in the twilight of their sun. The alien race, long isolated and cautious, watched carefully from a distance, unsure whether this moment would bring hope or disappointment. When the humans first stepped onto the surface, both sides felt a strange mixture of fear, curiosity, and wonder. The aliens had never seen beings quite like these visitors, tall and clothed in strange fabrics, speaking in sounds that were difficult to interpret. The humans, in turn, were awed by the aliens' appearance, their movements, and the intricate technology that surrounded them. For a while, there was silence, a careful distance maintained by both parties. Every glance, every motion was measured. The first gestures of trust came slowly. Humans offered simple gifts, tools, devices to help with daily life, and small portable samples of their own culture, like music recordings or drawings. The aliens observed cautiously, testing the humans' intentions. They remembered how they had been ignored and shunned by others for so long. But there was something different here: patience, respect, and a willingness to listen. These gestures were small, but they carried a weight that no weapon or technology could. Communication was challenging at first. Humans and aliens spoke in different languages, and even gestures could mean something very different in each culture. Misunderstandings occurred often, leading to moments of tension. One human stepped forward with a simple greeting and a small display of light that matched the alien signals. The aliens paused, studying this gesture, and then responded with a soft hum that meant acknowledgement in their own language. Slowly, understanding began to grow, and with each exchange, trust built a little more. Humans observed the alien society, noting both the beauty and the hardship of their world. They saw the remnants of once thriving cities, the damaged infrastructure, and the signs of struggle etched into daily life. But they also saw resilience, in families working together, in children learning and playing despite the difficulties, and in communities that had survived years of rejection. The humans realized that this civilization was not weak. It was strong in ways that could not be measured by technology or wealth alone. Over time, the humans began to help in small but meaningful ways. They repaired water systems, restored energy grids, and helped the aliens create more efficient ways to grow food. But they never imposed their own methods. They listened to the aliens' ideas, respected their culture, and worked alongside them. Each repair, each new system was a partnership rather than a gift, and that distinction mattered deeply to the aliens. It showed that the humans did not see them as weak or helpless, but as equals capable of rebuilding their world with guidance and friendship. The daily life of the aliens began to change slowly. Children laughed more freely, running through the streets as small gardens and playgrounds began to reappear. Adults worked side by side with humans, learning new techniques and sharing their own knowledge. Markets opened in the city squares once again, where people exchanged goods, stories, and ideas. Even the simplest activities carried a newfound sense of hope, and the air seemed lighter as trust and optimism returned to the streets. Cultural exchanges flourished. Humans were fascinated by the aliens' art, music, and storytelling traditions. They learned songs that had been passed down for generations, stories of resilience and tales of hope that had kept the society alive during dark times. In return, humans shared their own experiences, teaching about life on Earth, the struggles they had faced, and the ways people there had come together to overcome challenges. Both sides discovered that despite the vast differences between them, they shared a fundamental desire to connect, to help, and to create a better future. One of the most significant moments came when the leaders of both groups stood together in the central square of the largest city. They did not speak in formal terms or through political gestures. Instead, they shared a simple conversation, expressing gratitude, acknowledging past hardships, and pledging to work together for the future. The aliens realized that these humans were not just visitors, they were allies, friends who had chosen to act when others had turned away. For the first time, the alien society felt seen, understood, and valued. Despite all the progress, there were still challenges. Old fears lingered, and some aliens remained cautious, reluctant to fully embrace the newcomers. The humans understood this and never forced acceptance. They respected boundaries, giving the aliens space to heal at their own pace. Over time, the walls of fear gradually came down, replaced by curiosity, dialogue, and shared experiences. Every small success built confidence, and every interaction reminded the aliens that kindness could exist, even in a universe that had often been harsh and indifferent. The presence of humans also sparked new ideas and energy within the alien society. Young scientists experimented with new ways to harness energy, engineers improved infrastructure, and artists created works inspired by their collaboration with humans. The aliens began to see their world not just as a place of survival, but as a space where they could thrive and innovate. Their creativity and resilience, once confined by isolation and fear, now had room to flourish. By the time the first few months passed, the relationship between humans and the alien race had transformed. What began as cautious observation and tentative contact had become a deep, meaningful partnership. Both civilizations were learning from one another, discovering that empathy, patience, and mutual respect could bridge gaps that technology alone could not. The aliens, once shunned and forgotten, now had a chance to rebuild their society with guidance, companionship, and hope. Through all these experiences, both humans and aliens realized a profound truth: trust and understanding take time to build, but they are worth every effort. Small gestures, careful listening, and shared experiences can overcome fear, isolation, and doubt. The first contact was not just a meeting. It was the beginning of a journey where two very different civilizations could grow stronger together, creating a bond that would reshape both their futures. By the end of the first year, the alien cities were alive with activity once again. Children's laughter echoed in the squares, new gardens and schools opened, and families felt safe in a way they had not experienced in decades. The presence of humans had not erased their past struggles, but it had given them something far more valuable: hope, trust, and the knowledge that they were not alone. They had been abandoned by the galaxy, but in humanity, they had found allies willing to see them for who they were and to help them rebuild. The first contact was only the beginning, yet it had already changed everything. It was a reminder that even the smallest acts of courage and kindness could reach across the vastness of space. And for the alien race, the arrival of humans marked the first chapter of a new story, a story of healing, cooperation, and the promise of a brighter future. After the initial contact, humans and aliens began working side by side, not just in words or ideas, but in action. The alien cities, once dim and struggling, were now alive with activity. Humans brought knowledge, tools, and techniques, but they never forced their ways upon the aliens. Instead, they listened, observed, and adapted, making sure that the alien people were part of every decision. This approach built trust, and the alien society began to feel empowered in ways it had not experienced in generations. One of the first areas humans helped with was energy. Many of the cities had power systems that were old, failing, or inefficient. Humans worked with local engineers to repair and enhance these systems, showing them new ways to store energy, create sustainable sources, and maintain the delicate balance of their technology. What could have been a top-down instruction became a collaboration. Alien engineers contributed their ideas, combining them with human knowledge to create solutions neither side could have achieved alone. Food and agriculture also became a priority. Humans shared techniques for growing crops in harsh climates, while the aliens provided their knowledge of local soil, plants, and water cycles. Together, they built gardens and farms that could feed the population more reliably. Children and families were often involved, learning new methods and feeling the joy of seeing the barren fields turn green again. The act of growing food became symbolic of something larger, the rebuilding of hope and life itself. Education and knowledge sharing became another vital part of the collaboration. Alien children were eager to learn from humans not just about technology, but about different ways of thinking, art, and problem solving. In return, humans were fascinated by the alien culture, learning about centuries of history, philosophy, and creativity that had survived even in isolation. Classrooms and study spaces were filled with lively discussion, laughter, and curiosity. Knowledge became a bridge, connecting generations and civilizations. Healthcare was another area where humans could make a tangible difference. The alien population had been living with limited medical resources, and diseases that could have been easily treated lingered. Humans helped establish clinics, trained local healers, and shared techniques for diagnosing and treating common ailments. What made this effort extraordinary was the mutual respect. The aliens were not passive recipients. They shared their understanding of natural remedies, anatomy, and healing practices, creating a system that combined the strengths of both civilizations. The rebuilding of infrastructure went beyond survival needs. Humans helped restore schools, libraries, and cultural centers, places that held the memories, art, and traditions of the alien people. Streets were repaired, public spaces were cleaned, and new community centers were built. Everywhere humans went, they were careful to preserve what was important to the aliens, respecting their identity while helping them grow. In doing so, they demonstrated that progress did not mean erasing the past. It meant strengthening it. Every act of collaboration, no matter how small, was noticed and appreciated. Alien families who had once been silent with fear now laughed and celebrated again. Children played freely in the squares, their joy spreading like sunlight through the streets. Adults spoke of hope and possibilities that had seemed impossible only a short time ago. Even the elders, who had seen generations struggle, began to believe that a brighter future was not just a dream. Art and culture blossomed as the alien race regained confidence. Music returned to the streets and murals began to decorate once empty walls. Storytelling sessions, long forgotten, filled the air with tales of resilience, courage, and imagination. Humans participated, sharing their own songs, stories, and traditions, creating a cultural exchange that enriched both civilizations. This sharing was not just entertainment, it was healing, a reminder that even after long isolation, connection and joy could return. Beyond the cities, humans and aliens explored ways to protect and restore the natural environment. Rivers that had become polluted were cleaned, forests once cut down were replanted, and wildlife began to thrive again. Humans showed methods to monitor ecosystems and work sustainably, while the aliens shared their deep understanding of local flora and fauna. This partnership helped the planet heal alongside its people, creating a balance that had been lost for years. The success of these efforts was not instantaneous. There were setbacks, technical failures, misunderstandings, and moments of frustration. But humans and aliens learned to approach challenges together, problem-solving in ways that strengthened both civilizations. Each obstacle overcame became a lesson, each success became a celebration, and slowly the alien society began to feel whole again. In families, the changes were most visible. Parents who had once worried constantly about survival now felt a renewed sense of safety. Children, once confined to small homes or secret play areas, ran freely, laughed loudly, and learned eagerly. The streets were filled with the sounds of life and the communities buzzed with energy. Humans were present not as rulers or overseers but as friends, companions, and collaborators. This period of rebuilding also fostered innovation. Alien inventors, inspired by human methods and thinking, began creating new devices and tools, blending their own knowledge with the techniques shared by humans. Humans, in turn, learned from alien ingenuity, discovering solutions that had never occurred to them on Earth. The collaboration became a mutual exchange of ideas, strengthening the bonds between the two civilizations and opening possibilities for a shared future of growth and exploration. Perhaps most importantly, the alien race learned to hope again, not just for survival, but for life, for joy, and for opportunities to grow. They had endured isolation, rejection, and fear, yet with the help of humans they rediscovered resilience, creativity, and the courage to dream. Their society, once shunned and almost forgotten, was alive again. Children laughed, families celebrated, and communities thrived. Their culture had not only survived, it was flourishing. The rebuilding was not just physical, it was emotional and social. The aliens had been silenced for too long, but now they spoke openly, shared ideas freely, and trusted once again. The humans' presence reminded them that someone, somewhere, cared. The universe might have ignored them before, but they had found allies who were willing to walk alongside them, to help them heal, and to honor their history while supporting their future. Through this process, humans and aliens discovered that helping another civilization was not just about providing resources. It was about listening, respecting, and sharing. True collaboration created strength, and together they proved that empathy and understanding could overcome even the deepest isolation. The alien race, once abandoned and shunned, was no longer alone. Their cities glowed with energy, their hearts with hope, and their world with the promise of a new beginning. And so, the alien race began to flourish in ways they had only dreamed of. Their technology improved, their culture thrived, and their spirits lifted. Humans had come as strangers, but through patience, respect, and kindness they had become friends, allies, and partners in rebuilding a world that had once been on the brink of despair. Together they created a society not just restored but stronger, wiser, and more connected than ever before. Time passed and the alien world transformed in ways that had once seemed impossible. The cities, once quiet and fading, now glowed with energy and life. Streets were alive with laughter, music, and the soft hum of progress. Gardens and parks had returned. Rivers flowed clean and bright, and children ran freely in the open, their voices echoing joy and hope. What had once been a society shunned and forgotten by the galaxy was now vibrant, thriving, and full of promise. The aliens looked at their world with awe. They remembered how hopeless things had once seemed, how silent the universe had been in response to their cries. They thought of the years of struggle, the sleepless nights, and the fear that nothing and no one would ever come for them. And then they remembered humanity, the strangers who had listened, acted, and refused to turn away. Humans had come not as rulers, not as conquerors, but as friends who saw worth where others had only seen judgment. Families gathered in the city squares, telling stories of how life had changed. Parents spoke of the days when survival had been the only goal, when hope had felt fragile and fleeting. Children listened wide-eyed, amazed at the world that had been almost lost and grateful for the chance to live freely now. Elders who had carried the weight of exile for decades walked through the streets with pride, seeing their people rise again stronger and wiser than before. The aliens understood something profound. Life was not just about survival. It was about connection, trust, and hope. They had survived alone for so long, but they had flourished because someone had cared enough to reach out. Humans had reminded them that empathy could travel across unimaginable distances, that compassion was stronger than judgment, and that one act of kindness could reshape the future of an entire civilization. Work, creativity, and learning continued to grow. Scientists collaborated with humans to explore new technologies, combining knowledge to create systems that were more sustainable and efficient than anything they had before. Artists and musicians flourished, inspired by the shared experiences and the richness of two civilizations working together. Education became a cornerstone of society, where children learned not only about their world, but about humanity and how courage, kindness, and curiosity could change lives. The aliens began to look outward. Once they had only seen isolation, rejection, and a universe that seemed indifferent. Now they dreamed again of exploration, collaboration, and sharing their knowledge with others. They built ships, laboratories, and observatories, preparing for the day when they could contribute to the galaxy rather than merely survive. Their experiences with humans had taught them the value of connection, and they were determined to carry that lesson forward. Even the smallest gestures mattered. Simple acts like humans helping a child repair a toy or teaching a farmer a new planting technique had multiplied into waves of hope and confidence across the cities. The aliens had learned that care and attention, when given with respect, could transform despair into determination. The streets hummed with this energy, a quiet but unstoppable force that reminded them daily that they were no longer alone. The bond between humans and aliens grew stronger with each passing day. Trust had become the foundation of their relationship, and friendship the framework for collaboration. They celebrated victories together, shared lessons from mistakes, and recognized that every achievement was a product of partnership. The aliens had once believed that the galaxy had abandoned them. Now they realized that kindness could come from unexpected places, and that true allies were those who acted when others had turned away. Reflection became a part of their culture again. They celebrated festivals of survival, remembrance, and hope, honoring both their own resilience and the humans who had helped them rebuild. They spoke openly about the pain of rejection and the joy of rediscovery. These moments strengthened their society emotionally, teaching the young generation the lessons that had kept the civilization alive: courage, perseverance, and the value of compassion. The aliens also understood responsibility. They had been given a second chance, and with it came a desire to do better, not only for themselves but for others who might someday be in need. They shared knowledge, resources, and guidance with nearby systems, offering help to those facing challenges, inspired by the example humans had set. They had learned that empathy was contagious, that a single act of care could ripple outward and change many lives. Humanity's intervention had not erased the aliens' hardships, but it had shown them that they were capable of overcoming them. It had shown them that the universe, while vast and often indifferent, still contained those willing to act with understanding and courage. The aliens had survived centuries of isolation, but now they were thriving, building a society stronger and wiser than before. And so, the alien race stood at the beginning of a new era. Their cities were filled with life, their people with hope, and their hearts with gratitude. They had learned that even in the darkest times, connection and kindness could reach across unimaginable distances. Humanity had saved them not just through technology or knowledge, but by showing that someone cared. That simple truth, more than anything else, had given them the strength to rebuild, to dream, and to look forward to the future with confidence. As humans prepared to return to their own world, The aliens understood that this was not a farewell. They had formed bonds that would last, friendships that would endure, and partnerships that would shape the destiny of both civilizations. The universe might still be vast and challenging, but they no longer felt abandoned. They had learned that hope was not a fleeting thing. It was something to nurture, something to share, and something that could change the fate of entire worlds. The alien race, once shunned by the galaxy, had been saved by the courage, empathy, and action of humanity. They had rediscovered their strength, rebuilt their society, and embraced a future that had once seemed impossible. And in that shared journey, both civilizations learned a lesson that would echo across the stars. Even in the face of rejection and despair, kindness, understanding, and hope could transform lives, heal worlds, and create a bond that no distance could break. The story of survival, trust, and rebuilding became a testament to the power of empathy. A race once forgotten by the galaxy had found allies who believed in them. And in doing so, humanity had proven that true greatness is not measured by conquest or wealth, but by the courage to care, the willingness to act, and the determination to lift others when they have been left behind. And so, the aliens looked to the stars with renewed hope, ready to live, to grow, and to share their light with the universe, carrying with them the unforgettable truth that they were no longer alone, and that compassion could travel across the farthest reaches of space to change the course of destiny.